All right, now we are live, so we're back on the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee. It's November 12th still. It's a little after 12:30, and next on the agenda is it's labeled as cybersecurity update, but we're going to hear from the National Guard generally about the capabilities of the Guard when it comes to cyber incidents. We're not going to be talking about any specific issues, and from what I understand, none of this will be classified or anything that we need to go in an executive session for, so it'll be in open session. And I know I don't know everyone, so I will have us all introduce ourselves around the room. Start to my left with Senator Brock.
I'm Senator Randy Brock. I represent Franklin County and Northern Grand Isle County.
And Rep. James. If not, oh, there we go. We're just introducing ourselves, Kath.
I know. I'm so sorry. I'm having some glitchy internet today. I'm Representative Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District. I'm going to have my camera off for a little bit until I get this resolved.
Sure. And Rep. Priestley.
Yeah, State Rep Monique Priestley from Orange 2.
And we'll start in the room with our assistant first and go around.
North Committee Assistant.
Rick Sabel, Office of Legislative Counsel.
Lisa Govan, JFO IT Consultant.
Sean Miller, Agency of Digital Services.
Denise Bradley Hughes, Secretary for the Agency of Digital Services.
You don't have to introduce yourself, but you can if you will.
Well, I'm James Oldham and Chet.
And going to the Zoom, I suppose I'll let you guys go in the order that you want. I assume General Knight might go first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Major General Knight, Vermont's Adjutant General.
And Colonel Creeder.
Yeah, hello, I'm Colonel Hazel Kreider. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Vermont Army National Guard.
Master Sergeant Sanderson.
Yes, Master Sergeant Sanderson. I am the ISM for the Vermont Army National Guard, basically a cybersecurity manager.
And Major, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. I apologize.
I'm assuming me, sir. Yeah, Brian Geraci, 158 Squadron Commander for the Communications Squadron.
And Major Ledwidge.
Yes, good afternoon, Major Thomas Ledwidge from the 229th Cyberspace Operations Squadron.
Great, thank you. And I'm very proud that I actually pronounced that okay. So we're here and you've provided us with an overview of your capabilities. So I will just leave it to you to take it away and tell us what the National Guard can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll get started. Major General Knight, Vermont Adjutant General. I'll give you a little bit of background, then I'll turn it over to Colonel Kreider to walk through the capabilities overview. I think probably for background, a good place to start is understanding how the Guard is accessed. So the three major ways to do that, the first in domestic response is state active duty, which means it's state authorities and state funding. So that's very simply put, as we've seen in any number of events in Vermont, whether it was the pandemic or flooding, as a request goes to the governor. And we have our domestic response cell here, our Joint Operations Center, and our Director of Military Support tied in with the state EOC or other interested agencies. I will develop a budget request and push that to the governor because it does come with a cost. And then the expected duration. So we will call that in essence a troops to task. I need X number of personnel for this mission for this period of time. And then the governor approves or will figure out exactly what the needs are and we move forward to execute the mission. The other two are Title 32, meaning it is, as we are normally in our Guard status, federal funding, but it's under the control of the governor and the Adjutant General and our chain of command here. And then Title 10, of course, is the actual federalizing our forces like we do during a deployment overseas. So the other thing, and I believe Colonel Kreider will talk a little bit about this, I can give you some background on what other states are doing. So this is a timely conversation for us. we're growing our cyber capability compared to some other Guard states. We have a pretty small footprint. That being said, our folks are immensely talented and incredibly capable in their career fields. Other states have really been kind of ahead of the curve. Washington State comes to mind, and I've got some documents I can share with the committee, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, an example of what they do with their cyber workforce. They have memorandums of agreement with interested partners. That's within businesses, governmental organizations, infrastructure, those things where if it became an emergent need, the Guard could be used to help alleviate whatever challenge we're facing them. Now, there are ways to get at that. First and foremost would be near term. It would take some planning, but incorporate within our domestic response exercises for annual training periods. That's the 2 weeks of training that we do annually, or even on drill weekends. I'm not a cyber person. I can let Hazel and her team get into the specifics of what we can do collaboratively. It will take some planning, but I think this is a great conversation to have, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be on and have my colleagues here as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it over to, pending your questions, I'll turn it over to Colonel Kreider.
Thank you, General Knight. And if you can share the documents for Washington, that would be great. I'll share them with the committee as well.
Yes, sir. I'll send kind of a brief example. I'll give you a couple of MOAs that they have with interested partners.
Did anyone on the committee have any questions for General Knight? Not seeing any, we'll move on to Colonel. And I get the names wrong all the time, so I'll just say Colonel.
That's absolutely fine, sir. Would you like me to share my screen with the slides, or is someone else planning to do that?
I think the best way would be for you to do it.
All right, let me give it a go. I'm not super trained in Zoom.
If it's an issue, I'm hoping someone here could figure it out and should be able to do it well.
I'm looking to see if I should have it.
It is on the.
Vermont National Guard Cyber Capabilities Overview.
That's it.
Oh, thank you so much, because I see the option to share my screen, but it's not.
As long as you have the document open, like you can see it on your desktop. And then when you share screen, you just choose that one, but.
Yeah, I do have it open. I'm just not seeing the option to.
I can do it. The problem is when I'm running the Zoom meeting too, could be problematic, but let me try. What's that?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. Well, good afternoon, and thanks so much to the committee for making time to talk with us today. We're looking forward to sharing our capabilities overview for the Vermont National Guard. Like I said earlier, my name is Colonel Hazel Kreider. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Vermont Army National Guard. I've been in the military about 25 years. The secret is I'm an MI officer by trade, so a military intelligence officer. But the staff I work with is doing a great job to make me into an honorary IT professional. With that as the segue, we have several other cybersecurity professionals on the line with us today, and you'll hear from most of them as we go through the briefing. Major Brian Geraci, the commander of the 158th Communications Squadron, is on the line. Major Thomas Ledwidge, the ops officer for the 229th Cyber Operations Squadron, is on the line. And then both of them are from the Air Guard. And then from the Army side, we have Chief Chris Cover on the line, representing the critical infrastructure team that we'll talk about in a bit. He's the full-time staff member for that team and also one of the founding members of that team. He's been there since its inception, so a ton of historical knowledge. Also on the line from the Army, we have Master Sergeant Ryan Sanderson. He introduced himself. He's our ISSM, so the head of our cybersecurity department for our full-time staff. And he's also a former member of the defensive cyber operations element, one of the small teams that we'll talk about as we go through the brief. Next slide, please. There is our agenda. We'll go over some characteristics of the cyber citizen soldier, and that should say airman as well. I apologize to my air colleagues. We'll take a look at each of our small units in some detail. We'll talk about our flexible response framework, talk about and think about some administrative and logistics issues related to activation of our teams, and then have time for any questions. Next slide, please. So the cyber citizen soldier and airman right up front, I have to say I might be biased, but similar to what General Knight said, I'm continually impressed by the talent and professionalism of this group of soldiers and airmen. The majority of our cyber citizen soldiers and airmen either work in the civilian cybersecurity industry full-time, or they're in a full-time role related to cybersecurity within the Guard. Absolutely a highly trained, skilled, very experienced group of individuals, and they bring to bear skills obtained in their civilian jobs, so from the civilian sector, as well as from their military training, and those skill sets are mutually beneficial. Our cybersecurity professionals have a ton of education and industry certifications from all of the big names that you would expect to hear about. SecPlus, CISSP, Cisco, SANS, you name it, probably more than I can list here. Everyone has a top secret government security clearance. And then kind of what brings us about to sharing our capabilities with you today is that we're available to reinforce government and critical infrastructure upon request of the governor or at the direction of the Department of Defense. Next slide, please. So we have 5 cybersecurity focused units in the Vermont National Guard right now. If my math is moderately correct, somewhere around 130, give or take, personnel. The first 3 units you see listed there, the critical infrastructure team, the defensive cyberspace operations element, and then 3rd of the 124th Information Operations Battalion are our current Army units. And then the last 2 units, the 229th Cyberspace Operations Squadron and the 158th Communications Squadron, are our Air Guard units with a cybersecurity capability. A positive note for us and something we're looking forward to is that the Army is also going to stand up one more small cybersecurity team, hopefully during calendar year 26, if not during calendar year 27, and that will be a cyber protection team mission element. Next slide, please. So from here, I'll go through some of the capabilities of our Army teams, and then we'll turn it over to the Air Guard to talk about their capabilities. The first unit on the Army side we'll talk about is our critical infrastructure team. Their role is defensive cyber ops in support of critical infrastructure, and that can mean Department of Defense critical infrastructure and non-Department of Defense critical infrastructure, meaning areas designated by the Governor of Vermont as critical infrastructure. The way they're employed, or the expertise they have, I guess, comes in the area of industrial control systems, and those are hardware and software used to monitor and automate industrial processes in fields like energy and water treatment, for example. They also have expertise in supervisory control and data acquisition systems, which are basically large interconnected ICS systems. They come with the skill sets to do cyber operations planning, vulnerability assessments, ICS system hardening recommendations, and then threat identification and response. The next bullet you'll see is kind of a theme through all of our teams. They can provide hands-on keyboard incident response in support of the state if requested by civilian authorities through the governor. And then all of that response would be based on legal guidance they receive, and then a memorandum of understanding, memorandum of agreement put in place with the partner that they would be supporting. And we can talk a little more about that later. One unique aspect of this team is that they can be deployed out of state to support some federal cybersecurity missions as part of the Cyber Mission Task Force. You can see the resources listed below, 9 personnel. Another theme you'll see through all of these slides is all of our teams will come with some sort of legal augmentation to help make sure they are making good decisions. And then each of our teams has reached back to some different other subject matter experts for support. This team can reach back to their parent unit or their higher headquarters in Massachusetts, and then also to U.S. Army Cyber Command. That is just, and I realize I am totally just touching the wave tops of what this team can do. And from here, I'd like to turn it over to Chief Cover. Like I said, he's been with this team since its inception and is definitely our subject matter expert on the team, to see what he would like to add, to put a little more meat on the bones of my very high level overview. Chief Cover, anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, ma'am. Hi, everyone. This is Chief Chris Cover. I'm the full-time asset assigned to the critical infrastructure team. The slide's pretty self-explanatory, and ma'am, you did a great job really outlining the broader strokes of our capabilities, but I would just like to add a couple of things. We're a little over 7 years old officially, but actually unofficially, we're about 8 years old. We were stood up about 8 years ago unofficially. We have been a part of a state active duty mobilization in 2020 when with the hospital in Burlington. And we have, in our short 7 years of existence, already undergone 2 Title X federal active duty missions working on infrastructure down at Fort Meade under U.S. Cyber Command. So our depth of knowledge is very considerable. And we, as the slide states, our focus is industrial control systems, SCADA, the OT networks in general, and we've doubled down on that since our return in 2024 from active duty, and are spending a lot of time focusing on that for the future. That's all I have for rounding up the slide at the moment, ma'am. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Chief. I really appreciate you providing your input. Next slide, please. The next small team we'll talk through briefly is the defensive cyberspace operations element. This unit's primary task is defensive cyberspace operations to secure Vermont's portion of the Department of Defense Information Network. In a state active duty status, like what General Knight mentioned before, they can also protect state critical infrastructure, et cetera, in some ways similar to the CIT that we just talked about. Their employment focus is more the operation of networks and then cybersecurity compliance and readiness for networks. Some similar capabilities in cyber operations planning, network vulnerability assessments, network hardening recommendations, and forensic analysis. Similar to the CIT, hands-on keyboard incident response with those same caveats we discussed before. This unit is not typically deployed out of state for a federal mission like the ones that Chief Cover just talked about. Also a 9-person team, same caveat of some legal augmentation will come with them. And they have some different reach back resources that include U.S. Army Cyber Command and then the Army National Guard Common Cybersecurity Provider at National Guard Bureau in D.C. Master Sergeant Sanderson, who's on the line, is a former member of this team. And Ryan, don't let me put you on the spot, but if there's anything you'd like to add, you definitely come with a ton of experience and expertise.
No, thank you, ma'am. I'd like to say, it was a combination when we responded to the UVM hospital incident. Both CIT and DCOE combined as a team and provided assistance there. And it was a great collaborative effort and a lot of lessons learned and overall positive experience. That's all, ma'am.
Thank you, Ryan. Next slide, please. The last Army unit we'll talk about before we turn it over to the air is 3rd of the 124th Information Operations Battalion. So this unit provides information operations and cybersecurity training for all 3 components of the Army, the active duty, the U.S. Army Reserve, and then the National Guard. They teach a host of courses. 2 of those courses are cybersecurity related courses. You can see them both listed on the slide. Quick synopsis is the Incident Response Handler course is a 40-hour web-based asynchronous course with a focus on defensive cyber operations. The operational training experience is a 14-day resident course held down in Northfield at the schoolhouse there, also focused on defensive cyberspace operations. The course is built around and based on NIST standards and includes a hands-on practical application exercise at the end of the training. Aside from training, the little asterisk at the bottom is something I really want to point out. The schoolhouse provides training, but the people assigned there that teach these courses also have the training certifications and the skill sets needed to augment the other units we're talking about today during a cybersecurity response. Next slide, please. On this slide, we tried to put together just some examples of the cyber training and experiences that the Army teams we've just talked about have participated in the past. The three exercises listed at the top, Cyber Yankee, Cyber Shield, and Cyber Tatanka, our units tend to rotate through those exercises on a once every 2 to 3 year basis for each exercise. Cyber Yankee is the one I want to highlight the most. 2026 will be the 12th year this exercise has been held. And it's a Federal Region 1, so New England states-based exercise. The G6 CIOs, J6 of those states plan this exercise together every year. It's a hands-on keyboard exercise. There's a live opposing force that reacts to the things that the friendly teams do. So it's a thinking enemy. And then it helps to exercise the National Guard's response to a cyber attack against state government and critical infrastructure. What's really cool about it is it's a whole of government approach. Involved in the exercise are representatives from state government, National Guard Bureau, Department of Defense, various utilities, FEMA, FBI, the sector, ISACs, you name it. It's a very collaborative exercise, and it helps to build those relationships and establish relationships to the left of an event happening. Instead of meeting people for the first time when there's a critical event to respond to, you're building relationships and trust in advance of that. Cyber Shield is a similar exercise, but held at the national level and organized by National Guard Bureau. And then Cyber Tatanka takes place out in the Midwest, and I forget the FEMA region number for that exercise, but we've attended that as well just to get some varying experiences into the mix. Soldiers from our units have attended Locked Shields, which is a NATO cybersecurity exercise to work alongside our partners from the State Partnership Program within the Austrian military. And then a couple other professional events include the DEF CON Hacking Convention in Las Vegas, and then HammerCon, which is the Military Cyber Professionals Association annual convention. I listed the Department of Defense persistent cybersecurity training environment here as well. It's a tool that units can use to train on drill weekend with some pre-built scenarios in it. It's a cybersecurity training range. And then experiences have been mentioned already, but it felt important to mention the response to the UVM incident several years ago, and then also the CIT's deployments in support of federal missions. Are there any questions for me before I turn it over to the Air Guard for a little bit?
And if members of the committee on screen, I can't see you, so just speak up if you have questions. Sounds like none.
So next slide, please. And from here, I'll turn it over to Major Ledvidge to talk about his unit.
Thank you, Colonel Kreider. Major Thomas Ledvidge from the 229th Cyberspace Operations Squadron. Our mission provide members to fulfill DOTAN operations and defensive cyberspace operations. We are a force provider for Cyber Command, specifically to fill cyberspace protection teams. We do that through conducting intel-enabled hunt operations, countering and clearing adversary activity, enabling hardening actions with our mission partner, whether that be a system owner or mission owner, and assessing effectiveness of those response actions against current and future risk. We have approximately 67 personnel. That includes cyberspace operator, weapon system maintainers, intel personnel, and also planners. We utilize the Air Force Cyber Vulnerability Assessment Hunt Weapon System that is provided to us that do DCO operations for cyber protection teams, and that can be accessed through those legal channels as it is a Title X weapon system. And with that, I will turn it over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next slide, please. And Major Gracie, the floor is yours to talk about your unit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Major Racy again, Commander 158th Communication Squadron. So we got about 50 members here, 15 full-time, 35 traditional DSGs. So our main mission set is providing communication support to the F-35 mission here and abroad. So we provide secure mobile communications for 5th gen fighter support. But in addition to that, we keep the internet on the air side, the network provisioned running. So that has a lot of security. So we have information assurance, security, vulnerability scanning, network hardening, network infrastructure. So think of like if we were to be used in a state type incident response, it wouldn't necessarily be the initial response. We'd be more on the back end recovery would be where my squadron would fit in as far as support to the state goes. So we have people who are really good at building, reprovisioning networks, burning them down and resetting up more secure network architecture. So that's kind of what you could think of us as far as a resource for the state to use. And the same thing with everybody else as far as legal constraints and legal constructs to provision or request our assistance. So without any questions, that's it for me, ma'am.
All right, thank you very much. And then the next slide, please, goes over some of the Air Guard's cyber training and experiences. Do either of you want to talk through that?
I can take that one, ma'am. So the 229th and members of the 158th Communication Squadron have participated previously in Cyber Yankee exercise. This past year, we also provided members to the international exercise for Lock Shields that was done in coordination with the State Partnership Program. We were there assisting the Austrian team. We also assisted the State Partnership Program of New York. They needed cyber operations personnel to support the Brazilian exercise of CruiseX, and we facilitated that with operators of that. We also, in the 229th, and I believe also in the 158th Cyber Communication Squadron, use PCTE pretty consistently for our training. And we have also, in the 229th, deployed members in support of cyber commands, specifically for cyber protection teams. Thank you.
Any questions for our Air Guard counterparts before we move forward with the briefing?
Sounds like none.
All right, thank you both very much. Next slide, please. So if the Vermont National Guard is requested to support a state government incident or incident for an industry partner, what we would most likely use initially is a very flexible response framework. You just heard about 5 different small teams with cybersecurity capabilities, and most likely it would be a combination of soldiers and airmen from those units that would be needed or best suited to respond. We'd want to look at an individual capabilities-based response as opposed to simply taking one military unit and saying, go forward and work to address this incident. We'd really want to take a look at what the incident is, what skill sets it needs, and then find the personnel we have with the right skill sets to address those specific issues. The cyber advisory team, think of that as kind of the reconnaissance, right, for a cybersecurity incident. It would be made up with a couple experts from various units, and they would be selected based on the type of incident we believe we're dealing with. They would go out and assess the situation, obviously with some individual non-disclosure agreements in place, and then they'd recommend back to me and to cybersecurity leadership at the Air Guard what the best package we can offer is based on what needs to be accomplished for the state government partner or industry partner who's had an incident. Our caveat of JAG augmentation there remains and is definitely an important part of making sure we get these kind of responses correct. And then another mention is made of some of the reach back assets that we can reach out to. I apologize, and this slide, those two last bullets are not supposed to be there. They're supposed to be on the next slide. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So a couple administrative and logistics considerations. General Knight talked briefly earlier about the different ways the Guard can respond. So I won't belabor that point. He gave a great overview. There's definitely some logistics considerations as well. One of them is listed there, and it's computer equipment. Some Army units have organic computer equipment, but lots of other things to consider. Would we use our own computer equipment? Will the person we're responding in support of provide their own? Would they want us to have system access, accounts on their networks? So a lot of like administrative and logistics considerations when we participate in a response like this. Some other things we have to think about within the Guard are how are we going to feed our soldiers or airmen who are responding? What would transportation for them look like? And then how are we going to communicate about the incident with the person we're responding or the entity we're responding to support, and then amongst ourselves as well. The time from when we'd be requested and approved to support to boots on the ground could vary slightly based on what skill sets and what personnel are needed. We have considerations like some people might be mobilized out of state, like Chief Gover talked about. Someone could be in a situation where they specifically really can't get away from their civilian job right now due to a major project. And then we do have some people who live out of state, but who are members of the Vermont National Guard. We talked about the MOU, MOA, and JAG involvement earlier, like developing that MOA, MOU with those left and right limits is really essential. And then also building into that MOA, the ability to continually refine what that should look like as the situation develops. Like, for example, does the supported entity initially want us to have like only over-the-shoulder access to their systems? And then as things develop, they say, actually, we'd love to give you direct access so you can be more effective so that this can be expedited. Do they want us to be able to make changes to their network? Yes or no? So there has to be a lot of, there has to be the ability to continually refine that MOA as the situation develops. And then General Knight also mentioned earlier about the cost that would go along with a response like this. The best estimate I have right now would be like between $2,000 and $4,000 a day. But that estimate would have to be updated based on the response team composition because people with like more military service and more time and more experience tend to cost a little more per day. Next slide, please. And so that comes to the end of the briefing, the capabilities briefing we'd prepared for today. I appreciate everyone listening to what we had to say and learning a little bit about our capabilities. Are there any questions for the group?
Senator Brock.
Can you give us one or more examples of where members of your teams have been deployed actually, provided that you don't need to reveal any classified information to answer this?
Ma'am, I can speak a little bit from the air side, if that's all right. I think you're muted.
You're muted, Colonel.
Darn. Yeah, absolutely. Please go ahead, and then we'll jump in on the Army side. Thank you.
Gentleman from, I'm speaking, I was a former 229th guy, but we had people with 852 CPT and 856 CPT, which deployed to many various locations on the West Coast, Indo-PACOM, EUCOM, the East Coast, as well as some Hunt Forward teams supplementing on Title 10 active duty Air Force cyber protection teams, working with our EUCOM and NATO partners. That has been the most recent deployments, at least from the cyber aspect here over the last 3 or 4 years, sir.
Thank you. Any deployments for any activity in Vermont, again, without revealing any classified information?
No, sir, at least not from the air side, not from, that's not usually how a tasking would work. As far as the DoD from a Title 10 entity activation would go, DoD downward directed to maybe a municipal or a state entity within the state. Typically, that would go through like FBI, CISA, DHS, typically first.
Thank you.
From the Army side, sir, two units on the Army side provided personnel to support the incident at the University of Vermont Medical Center several years ago. So an in-state state active duty mission for those units. And Master Sergeant Sanderson and Chief Cover, I believe you both participated. If there's anything you'd like to share, I was not in this position when that event took place.
Hi, this is Chief Covert. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I will say, just like Sergeant Sanderson said, it was a great collaborative effort, and it really drew on both units and the expertise required to assist the hospital in what they needed. So to have that robust group of personnel to draw from to get the exact skill set that they were looking for was pretty successful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. And any other questions from the committee?
And Mr. Chair, it's Major General Knight. We're going to add a couple of things real quick.
Great.
So not specific to deployments here in the homeland, which we do have. We are on a schedule to support Title 10 missions. But you heard mention of our international partners, and that comes under the purview of our state partnership program. So we have partners with Austria, North Macedonia, and Senegal. And that's a part of our rotation, is an inclusive in the theater security cooperation plan, is cybersecurity. So we've been very active with Austria, North Macedonia, and Senegal in particular for network security. And for us, and Colonel Kreider mentioned it earlier, it is a mutually beneficial program. When we do these exercises and these, what we call, the mobile training teams that send over, they're exposed to things that they need to be aware of here in the United States. So that partnership is pretty invaluable in helping our partners and allies strengthen their cybersecurity. And in essence, is a learning lab for our folks to go over there, and because they're dealing with not just cybersecurity, but it's malign influence, it's misinformation, it's disinformation, and helping our allies and partners to counter that. And that feeds a bigger picture of regional stability and security. And then up front, Colonel Kreider talked about the certifications and training. So again, mutually beneficial. When the Guard, Air or Army, makes a cyber or communication specialist, whatever their skill set is, that's their chosen career field. Those become transferable skills into the civilian sector here in Vermont. And that is something that I think we need to talk about a lot more. As you know, we're always trying to grow the Guard. And Senator Brock knows I'm going to make a recruiting pitch. We would love, if I had my way, I would love to grow our cyber operations team here in Vermont, which means growing our force structure. And that'll take some time and planning, but I think the need is there. I think it's better. You've heard the skill set that we have here, a team of small teams. It makes sense to me to try to grow that. We are certainly a willing partner, and anything we can do to help cybersecurity within the state of Vermont, we want to be able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And thank you, General Knight. I appreciate the pitch.
That is one thing that I would, again, emphasize. We have a tremendous opportunity to grow not just cybersecurity, but other key skills that we as a state need, while at the same time serving national interest in the Guard. The Guard is a tool that we should think very carefully about its potential use and value to Vermont in a larger scale.
Great. And there's nothing more from the committee. I want to thank you, General Knight, Colonel Kreider, all of you for presenting us with this. It gives us insight into what our capability is, and it's one of our oversight duties. It's cybersecurity in general. So knowing all of that is helpful to us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And with that, I think we have you scheduled for 2 o'clock, but does it make sense to just move right into the overview of the Tell me what the title of the act is. It's
Security breach notice act.
Security breach and notice. So we'll move right into that with the.
Join the Zoom here. I will need to share my screen again, Lori, just so you know. Thank you. So, Rick Sagel, Office of Legislative Counsel, good to see you all again. So as the chair just mentioned, one of your charges in your statute is cybersecurity. And Vermont has a few statutes that deal with cybersecurity. And one of the bigger ones that's been around for actually 20 years now, I think it was initially 2005 when it was enacted. It's been changed a few times since then, is the Security Breach Notice Act, 9 VSA 2435. So I want to give a rundown of this act, what it is, how it works. The Attorney General's office has enforcement, and they're the ones that are really behind the scenes being notified of a security breach. And I will be able to answer some of the questions, but if the committee wants to know more about if there is a breach, how the AG's office handles that, I would suggest the committee bringing in somebody from the Attorney General's office for more detail. So the first question is, how do we define a security breach? Because you don't really have a breach unless you know exactly what that means. It's an unauthorized acquisition of electronic data or a reasonable belief of an authorized acquisition of electronic data that compromises the security, confidentiality, or integrity of a consumer's personally identifiable information. I'll define that here in a second. Or login credentials. And that one's easy. It's just your email, username, and password. But I'll also give you the definition here in a little bit. So subdivision B, a security breach, oh, by the way, by a data collector. So that's another key part is we will define data collector here in a moment, but you must be defined as a data collector in order to report a security breach. Subdivision B, a security breach does not include good faith, but unauthorized acquisition of personally identifiable information or login credentials by an employee or an agent of the data collector for a legitimate purpose of the data collector, provided that these details are not used for a purpose unrelated to a data collector's business or subject to further unauthorized disclosure. So this could be an accidental, maybe during training, during some internal working, an employee gets access to this information. It's in good faith. It's not a breach per se. Subdivision C, in determining whether personally identifiable information, PII, as it's also known, or login credentials have been acquired or is reasonably believed to have been acquired by a person without valid authorization, a data collector may consider the following factors, among others. This is kind of, these are not shalls, right? This is some guidance for data collectors. Indications that the information is in the physical possession and control of a person without authorization. It's a lost, stolen computer, that kind of thing. Indications that the information has been downloaded or copied. Indications that the information was used by an unauthorized person, such as fraudulent accounts opened or instances of identity theft reported, or that the information has been made public. Not exhaustive, but these are indications that data collectors may use to determine if there's been a breach of that information. So who is a data collector? A data collector means a person who, for any purpose, whether by automated collection or otherwise handles, collects, disseminates, or otherwise deals with PII, includes the state agencies, political subdivisions of the state, public and private universities, privately and publicly held corporations, LLCs, banks, and so basically almost everybody, right? And the interesting thing here is it does include government, so state government and universities within the state. What is personally identifying information? It means a consumer's first name or first initial and last name in combination with one or more of the following digital data elements when those elements are not encrypted, redacted, or protected by another method that renders them unreadable or unusable. So that's an interesting part there, right? So it's not a breach if the information is encrypted, right? So if you have some type of loss of data, it's been compromised. If that data is encrypted, it's not a breach under this definition because it can't be read by another person. But if it's not encrypted, redacted, or protected, so it's your first name, first initial, and last name plus one of these other data elements, your social security number, a driver's license or non-driver state ID card number, your individual taxpayer ID, passport number, military ID card number, or other ID number that originates from a government ID document that is commonly used to verify identity for a commercial transaction. A financial account number or credit or debit card number, if the number could be used without additional identifying information, access codes, or passwords. A password, personal ID number, or other access code for a financial account. Unique biometric data generated for measurements or technical analysis of human body characteristics used by the owner or licensee of the data to identify or authenticate the consumer, such as a fingerprint, retina, or other unique physical representation or digital representation of it. So probably your face scan as well would be one of those data elements. 6, genetic information and health records or records of a wellness program or similar program of health promotion or disease prevention, a healthcare professional's medical diagnosis or treatment of the consumer, or a health insurance policy number. So again, it must be your name, first initial, last name, and then one of these elements to be considered a breach. I mentioned before, login credentials are also combined with PII. So as I said, login credentials just means your username or email in combination with a password or an answer to a security question that together permits access to an online account. Okay, back to the act. Let's say that you're a data collector. Let's say there's been a security breach, and let's say it's affected PII or login information. So for this part, we're going to focus on PII. Login information is a little bit different, not quite as intense. So consumers, which is any Vermonter, must be notified by the data collector not later than 45 days after discovery or notification of the breach, and a copy of that must be sent to the AG's office or DFR if it's a bank. This 45-day timeline can be delayed through a request for a law enforcement. So you may occasionally have a criminal element to this breach, right, where it's been done by an outside actor, it's malicious. You may involve state police, FBI, right, and they could request to the data collector that please do not release this information yet because this is an ongoing investigation. It must be in good faith, and you must disclose that to the AG that there is this law enforcement request. So there is also the consumers are one way, but the AG or DFR, if it's governed by DFR, must be given a preliminary notification by the data collector not later than 14 business days after discovery or notification of the breach. That one's pretty much, even if there is an ongoing investigation, law enforcement, the AG still must be notified. The 14 business day timeline is waived for data collectors that previously submitted a sworn affirmation to the AG's office that says you have these practices that ensures to the most possible that you take care of data, you encrypt it, and so forth. occasionally, even if there is a breach, you do not have to provide notice to consumers. It's not required if the data collector establishes that misuse of PII or login credentials is not reasonably possible, and the data collector provides notice of the determination that the misuse of either is not reasonably possible pursuant to the requirements of the subsection. If the data collector establishes that misuse is not reasonably possible, the data collector shall provide notice of its determination and a detailed explanation to the AG or DFR. The data collector may designate its notice, and as a trade secret, I won't continue that part. So there are times during your investigation portion, you still must provide that 14 business day notice to the AG. However, if during your research of analysis of the breach, if you determine that there was no misuse of PII or login, then you would not have to alert the consumers of the breach. But again, the AG must be notified. Violations. This act is covered by the Vermont Consumer Protection Act, which gives the AG and the state's attorney's office authority to enforce any violations and seek remedies for violations. So if you're familiar with the Consumer Protection Act, typically, it's injunctive relief and then $10,000 fine per violation. And again, the AG can tell you how often this happens and how often they determine to investigate and actually prosecute these. I don't have that detail for you. And finally, the AG does have a very good webpage for this act because they're the ones that enforce it. And they have, I think it's a 50-page document. And I clipped one of the, I think, pretty good pages talking about what to do if there is a security breach. If you're a business or a state agency and you think you may have had a breach for whatever reason, it's best to investigate, secure the data immediately, take reasonable steps, even though it's not in the act, right? This is the AG's guidance for entities. If you are involved law enforcement, if you are storing someone else's data, contact the owner of data immediately, not the consumer, but the primary data holder. Provide the AG notice within 14 business days. Notify the consumers in the most expedient time possible, but not later than 45 days of the breach. And then notifying the major credit reporting agencies that there was a breach, and you'll be sending them information about that breach. So
Hey,
that's
Rob,
kind of my.
Laura's in the waiting room. Sorry.
So that's my quick rundown of this act. Happy to answer questions that you may have about it.
Just a couple of questions of data elements. It says a social security number. Does that mean the entire number or does it mean a portion of a number, such as the last four digits?
So, not defined. Let me double check if it actually defines social security number later in the act. It does not. So to me, that would mean your full 9-digit social security number. There is another act in this same chapter that involves social security number practices, how businesses and state agencies should handle your social security number. That would apply in a different way. But for this specific act, it would be all 9 digits. Yeah.
And as you know, it's very frequent that banks or other institutions use the last four digits of the number along with the name and perhaps another element as an identity document or as an identity method in telephone. And so one of the questions that we may want to think about is whether or not we may want to make that more specific in terms of numbers. So I'm thinking of another thing beyond the last four of the social. Identity, date of birth is not in there at all.
Right.
Which also is used along with the last four by a number of financial institutions as a method of identification in phone transactions. I don't think you would necessarily want to eliminate date of birth or add date of birth to the list, but it's something that we want to just think about its use in conjunction with other methods of identification.
It's interesting that definition of PII is very different from the criminal ID theft definition. So Rep. Priestley, I can see the yellow hand.
Yeah, okay. I have three questions. So first, Rick, I'm wondering, as a legislative oversight committee, how might we make sure that this process is being followed? And if we have any reason to believe it's not, what might you suggest that we do?
So I think it depends on, what portion you want to be following up on. Is it the concern that there are breaches that are happening and there's no notice to consumer? Are there maybe preventing breaches? I guess the question would be, what are you looking to do or prevent or oversee?
Okay. Let me come back to that. Are you aware of any statutory exceptions to this that you outlined that could bypass reporting a breach to the AG if there's a breach of state government systems?
So I mentioned there's that one exception to consumers that if misuse has been established not to have happened, then consumers, but you would still have to give that the 14 business day. And you would need to tell the AG that you determined that we have determined that misuse didn't happen.
Okay. And then a question on the violation piece, because that's too, like a outside software vendor. What happens if if it's a homegrown state system that this happened with? Like, is the state supposed to report on itself if something happens, or is that like a gray area?
Yeah, so it's if it's a state department agency that has the breach, they would still obviously need to report it according to the act. But if they don't, then it gets tricky, right? Because is the AG going to prosecute a fellow agency, right? And can they is also a question. So yeah, definitely tricky. How that would go.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
I'm not sure who else was on, so if anyone has.
I think Rep. James has a hand raised.
Yeah,
Let me stop sharing.
Sorry, I just had a quick question. Those timelines for notification seem long to me. Is that like industry standard or what? 2 weeks and 45 days? Or...
I can't speak to what standard, and hopefully my screen goes. There we go. I can't speak to what standard, Rep. James. You do want to give some time for the entity to determine if there was misuse of data. And you don't necessarily want to scare consumers right away and send them notices that their data has been compromised. But yeah, I don't have what the commercial standard timeline would be.
Do you know if this is something of a model statute that's adopted by other states?
I think 20 years ago is when Vermont did it. I know that there was amendments back in, I think, 2019, 2020 that brought in some California elements to it. But the original act, I'm sure it was, but I couldn't tell you which state or which model we adopted it from.
Seeing any other hands?
Actually, I
Go ahead,
I
Brooke.
thought of how to phrase my additional my follow-up to Rick's question on my question. So say as legislators we hear concerns from constituents or we hear from employees or something like that. Like say that we are, as a legislative, liaison for people, that we hear something of concern and we're not sure whether or not something did happen, and like what would be the process for us looking in order to I guess help out a consumer that has concerns about whether or not something happens and what the follow-up was.
Well, as a, so are you speaking as a legislator or as a
Yes.
concern? Okay. So, and maybe not that it matters, but, as a legislator, I can't give advice, but it would make sense to reach out to the entity, that you're hearing has had some kind of issue and, asking, are you aware? Maybe they're not aware of the act. Maybe not every person knows we have a Security Breach Notice Act. Are you aware that there's this act? Are you aware that there are certain timelines that must be followed? Certainly would not recommend going to the AG or any law enforcement without first contacting the entity, that there's been word of some type of breach. But if they say there's been nothing, then I don't know what to say. What you would do as a legislator, except going through, just maybe other entities that would know if there's been a breach. It's similar systems are shared between other agencies and departments, and maybe you can ask about that, but that's the best I can tell you.
Sure. Thanks, Rick.
You had mentioned at the beginning that there are a number of other statutes that might control cybersecurity incidents, and I perhaps should have asked you to look at those and bring them to us as well. But is there anything, you mentioned this one was one of the big ones. Is there anything of a similar nature where there's a cybersecurity incident and then there has to be some response by whoever the target is? You might not know. I did not.
I don't know, Mr. Chair. Specific to cybersecurity, I would need to look at that. This is the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Because it applies to every entity in the state. Well, as a data collector, if you're a data collector, it applies to you. So I can double check that, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm reading this as being incredibly broad.
It's pretty broad.
The data collector could be really anything. And it doesn't even need to be necessarily, that expressly doesn't need to be automated or under a computer. And a reading security breach, it's talking about electronic data. Would this apply to just a single name and social security number?
Let's see. So by single name, what do you mean?
Well, say they got my name, Robert Plunkett, and my social security number.
Yes.
Would that be a breach?
Yes.
That in and of itself?
Yes. Because it's your name. It could also be R Plunkett, right? So it's your first initial, last name, and then in connection with one of these elements, including social security number would be one. Also assuming it's not encrypted. If it's encrypted, then it's not a breach, but.
Right, yeah.
Rick, is there any public notice or is this kind of valid for like FOIA once it's past the legal deadlines?
Oh, yeah.
Or like, is it posted publicly or something?
Then my understanding, and again, this is probably better for the AG. My understanding is the 14-day is confidential, because there could be a law enforcement.
Right. But after the 14 or even the 45 days.
Certainly, when the consumers are notified, it's public, right? Because you're literally sending out details to the public that this has happened, and their information could be compromised. But I don't think that 14-day preliminary notice is going to be subject to public records.
No, sure. Yeah. But post 45, it sounds like that is. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, seeing that we don't have further questions on this, I appreciate it. We're going to be finishing earlier than expected. But that's looking at the statute on our oversight evaluation and recommendations for cybersecurity, this is very broad.
Yes.
Falls under that. I'm sure there are many different aspects of this that we didn't touch on. Before we end, I did want to ask the rest of the committee, our next meeting is scheduled for December 2nd. It is the day before the all legislative briefing. I just wanted to check with folks on whether or not that was going to cause any issues. If not, we'll keep it on then.
It's fine by me. I mean, I'll join remotely again.
Yeah. And of course, that's fine at any time. So great. So if there's nothing else from the committee, I think we can adjourn.
Thanks, everybody.